Welcome to the Somatic Movement Summit, a free online event where you'll learn from leading experts how to embody all of yourself through the medicine of movement. Share this powerful program with your friends and family, and come join us on Facebook at The Shift Network. And now your host, Gayatri Shriefer.
Welcome, everyone. We're so glad to have you joining us here today. I'm so excited to introduce to you our very special guest today, Don Hanlon Johnson. He's a professor of somatics at the California Institute of Integral Studies. Now in his late 80s, he's a part of a team initiating a new online doctoral concentration in somatics within the Integral and Transpersonal Psychologies program. Trained by Ida Rolf, he has a lifelong practice in Rolfing. Don is now also learning more about human development from his newborn granddaughter. Don, it is a great pleasure to have you joining us here today. Welcome.
Thank you, Gayatri.
So, Don, you have been instrumental in the shaping of the somatic field. You have seen it grow. And at the current time in this COVID situation internationally, what can you speak to? What is the importance of somatics in these times, and what can you highlight?
That's the question that occupies me very much now, but it's always occupied me from the beginning. Because when I first came into this work so many decades ago, I thought, here are all these riches for transforming the human community into a more peaceful and cooperative world. And there was too much focus on individual methods competing with each other. And so from the beginning, myself and a handful of other people, some of you whom you know, got the concern about how do we weave together these brilliant works in a way that can make a really big impact on making the world a better place to live. And at that time, as now, we were very much motivated by a lot of the crises in the about nuclear holocaust, the Vietnam War, all kinds of the revelations of torture going on around the world, violence, so forth. So there have been many, many moves since then to bring together these communities. I just want to acknowledge you here in putting on the Somatic Movement Summit. These kinds of things are what long ago we realized needed to happen if people were to start to weave together their ideas and their works to make them more impactful and more refined. And now in the midst of what to me is the biggest event of my lifetime in terms of a planetary event, is totally unique in that everybody's involved, whether they like it or not. Its importance to me is even more compelling about how we all know a lot about how to handle violence, how to handle mechanical responses that get in the way of dialogue, that can help people slow down and say, what on earth are we doing here? Instead of rushing to the next inappropriate response, and so forth. So for me, the current situation, particularly now that I have all this quiet, we all have this quiet, how it's a deep time for reflection. In that regard, I want to say that one of the big ideas that caught me early on in somatics was F. Matthias Alexander of the Alexander technique. You probably know he has this. He has a lot of, both in his practical work and his theoretical work, he makes a lot of emphasis on the pause, on interrupting mechanical behavior. And he has this essay on the bomb that he wrote in 1946, where he said, why don't we just stop the planet for about 5 minutes so we can say, what on earth are we doing here? And I've thought of that essay a lot. It's like, because it's happening by force right now. I'm just amazed at the quiet the quiet. The airplanes are gone. Very few cars. The air is clearer. The forest is more silent. So it's like we're having to stop here and say, what on earth is going on here? And it's a time for the upwelling, I think, of what we in the somatics field have to give about the appreciation for the things that are so basic. This amazing planet we've been gifted, the life of our loved ones, and birth and conscious dying and healing. So I'm just going to include this introductory little wrap by saying there's another pole going on in my life, which is quite profound also, which is the birth of my granddaughter on September 27th. I was there. I've been very much involved with her in these months, watching this amazing movement into expression and life. That's the second time in my life. My son was born 26 years ago, and I caught him coming out of the womb and have been with him ever since in one way or the other. But I learned a lot from the first couple of years before there was a lot of so-called adult behavior, watching the whole unfolding of the primal movements. And I've been thinking a lot of F.M. Alexander, who said, if only we could recover the learning capacities we had when we were infants, learning how to grasp and to walk and to sit and stand and to utter simple words, we'd be able to handle most of our problems, because it's a gene. It's really fresh in my mind. I saw her, for example, one day going the first time ever, finding her way from being on her belly to rolling over onto her side. And I could see the amazing learning leap there, where she was experimenting, kind of moving this way, trying that, trying this, and then finally, whoop, she gets over. And how wonderful it would be if the world would participate in that kind of, more and more people in the world would learn how to pay attention to the careful switching of our positions like that. So that's my opening remark.
Thank you, Don. And that is so interesting to look at the current COVID-19 situation as a possibility, as a global pause. And because in the pause there lies an infinity of possibilities. So how are we internationally as a somatic community tapping into that possibility, into that opportunity to simply attune to ourselves, to become a little more connected to the inner sound, the inner song happening inside of us? And then how does that influence the way we are perceiving our surrounding? Or even how does that support us in just handling or managing or interacting with the current state of affairs in a way that is keeping us self-connected? So I would love to speak a little more about that. And so what do you think is the role of somatic work? Because the field has just boomed in the last 50 years. You've been in it from the beginning and helped shaping it. And so how do you see the importance of a somatic practice, or what can it yield? How can it aid us in these times?
I've been rethinking a lot of Wilhelm Reich's work, particularly his great book, The Mass Psychology of Fascism. So as you know, many of the teachers in my early years were refugees from the Holocaust. They came here from northwestern Europe. And so much of the early work of people like Charlotte Selver and Marion Rosen and Ilse Middendorf and Lily Ehrenfried in Paris were very shaped by their escaping here by the skin of their teeth in some cases. And so their quiet sensory work, although it was a very healing and personally transformative, they saw it as part of resisting the madness that comes from the fascist mentality. And I think that word mentality is important. That I think what social reformers often forget is that mentalities are not abstract ideas. They're rooted in the human flesh. And Wilhelm Reich said it really clearly in The Mass Psychology of Fascism, where it says that the human incapacity for freedom is rooted in the human organism. It's like people are habituated to be obedient. They're habituated to go along with fanatics. We've got this big time going on here right now in the United States with these crazy people running the government. But all around the world, these fascist leaders are kind of coming to the fore. And I've often thought of the idea of another American person that focused on the body, William James, long ago, who said, and John Dewey, who said, democracy, you have to have people who are democratic people to make a democracy. You have to have people who, in their experience, can sit down and listen to another person, and who have the capacity to be supple enough to adjust their ideas to notice that there are other ideas that are not quite the same. So the notions of developing a flexible being, which was so big in the somatics movement, learning how to be more flexible, mobile, energetic, and also how to be quiet, to be quiet and listen. It's been certainly a struggle in my life. Just shut up. and other people, of course, have a different polar problem. They have to learn how to step up and speak. So how's that? to start
That's
something.
wonderful. It's the greater application of how we can create the world we want to live in. And I want to connect that to how you began speaking, and that was of your granddaughter. So I would say so much of the somatic work is about returning to our innocent, natural state, our natural somatic state. And that is also, I would say, the medicine the world needs more now than ever. Yeah. So how would we go about that? I know you have a wealth of knowledge. What is your insight? How do we go about returning to our natural somatic state?
Well, it's a particularly troublesome question in light of the virus, because one of the perceptions I have of what's happening that seems quite dangerous to me is that the reason that we've had this kind of pathological mind-body split in the culture is because it's not easy being a body. Reich says, of course we're going to have a mind-body split because it's fearful to be in the body. And now with this, I've never experienced, at my age, with my lung history of lung difficulties, I have to really be careful not to get hysterically afraid of what's in the atmosphere, because it's so dangerous. And it's like living in the middle of a forest fire. The viruses are just going so fast. So it's very easy to dissociate. And it makes it very easy to adhere to a doctrine that says the earth is dangerous, let's clean it up, clean all these forests out. Being in a body is dangerous, so let's just nurture spiritual consciousness and so forth. So it's a very important time to see how do we, who are familiar with this territory, how do we answer questions about the fearfulness of the viruses? How do we maintain that it's still a good thing to live close to our bodies and the earth?
Yeah. And so there is really a collective sense of fear, and we have the possibility as somatic practitioners and to either tap into that or not. And I would say maybe with the somatic practice, we have more of a choice, but also I would say at the same time, we are more receptive. So I would say that we can attune to this process in ourselves and outside of ourselves even deeper, which comes with its own set of challenges. And I would like to see it as an invitation to really anchor and deepen in my own self-connection and hold that space for others, and to be in the fullness of my own experience with it, my vulnerability. Maybe I am scared for relatives, or the sort of global development concerns for countries who maybe can't manage this so well. And so I think it also puts me in touch with my human side, with the care I have for others. And I think the somatic work is so much about that, how to be receptive enough to not just remain within this frame, but to extend my receptivity to the world and to the cosmos around me. What do you think about that? What is your thoughts?
I'm particularly intrigued by, I think of you as this generation's versions of the generation I grew up with, because they had to deal with the Holocaust and slavery and all of those things. And you are a first person with this voice to deal with the virus, which has been a huge thing. So I'm sure that you could develop something wise for us all out of your struggle with that. I mean, I think that's an important piece.
Wonderful. And then if we return to that question of the innocence of the natural state of the way we come into the world, so much of the work we're doing, whether it is somatics or just like in life, where we are in different ways looking at how can we self-connect to that place again, that initial authentic, natural self-expression.
In that regard, I did want to say a couple of things about successes that are good models for the present situation. Early on, two of the big challenges that we faced as a somatics community were the environmental crisis and the crisis of violence of many kinds. And in the interim of the 35 years or so, we run our own program, licensed program, where people are working with clinical licenses and so forth. Two big movements have started from out of somatics. One is a number of little organizations that work with, particularly with children and middle schoolers, to take them out into nature and give them a feel for how to love the environment, how to love being in the environment. And so a lot of it comes out of people who came out of the somatics field and know how to go out into the forest and teach people to feel safe there and to enjoy the amazing lessons there. So that's one big success that's been developing, and people write about it, and it's been a big factor in our community. And another one is dealing with violence. So some of our people now are key people in the men overcoming violence community, teaching men how to modulate their rages and their urges to swing out and to express in inappropriate ways, all of which are, we got a treasury of methods within the somatics field to help men regulate their these volcanic urges and eruptions. And that's often at the personal and family level, but it also comes out into, we've had 3 or 4 clinics developing around the country to work with the problem of victims of political torture, where touch and gentle movement becomes such an important thing for healing that kind of trauma. So I bring these up because they're models of, we've done things like this before. It's not as if this is a new problem and a new challenge to be met, that we've been moving this way all along. I think you will certainly know that there's a misperception out there that somatics is just about taking care of yourself, when in fact, from the very beginning, because of the background of all of these great teachers, it's been both about the self and the world.
Yeah, and I think that is a piece that's sometimes initially overlooked. When we come into the somatic field initially, it's very much about the first person experience and my emotions and my sensations and my history and the opening and what I want to do. And then gradually the world just opens and it's no longer at all about me. And so that is I believe that is the beauty of the somatic work. And you are speaking about the greater application. Could you elaborate a little more on that? How to use somatics for both personal transformation, but for, I would say, global change, for socialism?
Well, you're doing one of the major things, and why I originally said for me language was an important factor. Um, I think language is really crucial element here. How do you get people to talk together? So the answer to your question is one I can give my opinions about, but the real answers to your question is uh, how do we think about that as a group? So we have to have people working in from many angles together, learning how to converse about what our work is about, and opening up, being creative about how we're going to deal with this. So I don't think there's any recipe. I think that one of the things that I early on kind of wrote about in the somatics field, and Eleanor was one of my fans about writing about this, is that everybody had these kind of set ideas about what the body is and how you do this and do that. And I was very interested in creating a more cooperative thing where we said, well, there are a lot of ways of looking at the body. There are a lot of different ways of opening of my senses and so forth. Let's do it more carefully together so that we process what's working, what's not working, where we can help each other, and how we can expand it. So here we have this huge problem. And now you're bringing people together. That's great. It's a wonderful thing to do. And I think we need to do more of that, and particularly in local communities, so that we have more interaction at the local level about how we can meet the problems that are coming up in our backyards. And I just want to continue one more thing to emphasize that language is so important here. It's if we keep rushing to the old words and the old phrases and just keep running the old records, that gets nowhere. It ends up with a lot of debate, a lot of one-upping the other, a lot of pretensions about being scientists, all kinds of junk. And if we can learn to be quiet more often and slow down, those of us who talk too much, and if we give room to people who have a hard time speaking and do all those negotiations that require a lot of the practices that we all are used to, practices of slowing down our breathing, paying attention to our breathing, pay attention to the fact that I'm reacting very badly to this person. I need to just settle down and let myself open up, all those kinds of things that are so much the bread and butter of the somatics movement.
Absolutely. And that is also, I love that the somatic principles are allowing us to first practice it within ourselves. You were saying slowing down, paying attention to our own breath, and so on, that we can practice these principles or these gateways within our own body mind, and then we can start to apply it naturally. It's just going to overflow into our close relationships and into our workplace and the way we're interacting with our surrounding. And I also believe, like just the way you were saying now, it's so important to make that connection and to spend time in our local communities and to not just practice our somatics as a hobby, but to really, it is really time to put it to good practice in our lives, and to also offer support, I would say, to people who maybe haven't been exposed yet to the value of honoring your own or using your inner feedback as something that can guide you in life. So if we're sticking with the COVID, what is the importance here of being able to read or make sense of our felt sense, our embodied sense of self? How can that aid us?
Well, it's just saying the obvious in a way that the big problem that's planetary right now is fear. And if fear is the big pusher, bad decisions are made in fear. So unless we settle down and allow information to churn through us and to, for example, one thing that bothers me a lot about the present situation that's related to somatics is I know from my own difficult history with breathing problems, if I don't get out and exercise every day, I get in real trouble very fast. So I have to get out on the trails, and somehow the public health people are not paying enough. I think it's right to shelter in. I think that's really important, But I think people also need to be able to exercise. I have friends in Barcelona who can't go out. They can only go on their roof. And in Shanghai, this is dangerous because they're my age and they need lungs they need to be worked. They need to be all of these wonderful techniques I've learned from all these amazing women over the years about breathing. I'm so grateful that I learned all this stuff because I have endless ways that I can keep my lungs active, all of the lobes of the lung. I lost one last year, a collapsed lung, and I had to really do a lot of work to get my lung power back. So I think that helping people, I think I don't want to just get lost in going too fast. Slow me down, stop me if I'm going too fast. But I think there's so much we have to contribute here. For example, in that regard, a lot of people, getting fit and developing strength and resilience, they're kind of mental attitudes and they may or may not do it. I think it's so important to share what we all know about how important it is to develop all these parts, to develop, our breathing awareness, our sensory awareness, to tone our muscles, to tone all the different kinds of muscles, to develop strength and resilience so that we can live in a very difficult world with very difficult challenges. So there's an enormous amount we have to share other than simply, as you say, a hobby or some kind of, what do you call it, requirement that I have to do every day, like I have to take my vitamins.
Thank you, Don. And the somatic work is so much also about building a toolbox for the individual so that we have the right tools, we have techniques, we have movements, we have different ways of using our awareness in times of need. And so that we can, the way you were saying, we can self-regulate and we can build our self-resilience. And I think that's a really empowering place to be, whether we are in the current situation or not, just that sense that I can trust myself, I can help myself, I can self-regulate, I can adjust to when things are overwhelming. I have ways to return to calm if I want to. And I also know how to excite myself if that's what I want. So I would say the somatic work helps us to gain the width or the broadness of the life experience so that we can enjoy it and to live fully instead of just managing in our everyday interactions. So how have you seen, you have been a part of the field from the beginning, and how have you seen the applications change or the receptivity in the public change to the somatic field?
Well, I live on the side of Mount Tamalpais, north of the Golden Gate Bridge. And one of the most dramatic and visual changes is, mountain bikes were invented by three guys here, one of whom is my neighbor. So when I first moved here 32 years or so ago, you saw people kind of hiking up the mountain, but mountain bikes were just invented. And now you go out and you see these, amazingly fit people just chugging away, going up this mountain on their mountain bikes, hundreds of them, just hundreds of mountain bikes. And then alongside of them, hundreds of runners going the Dipsea Trail, up and down the Dipsea Trail. So there has been a fitness movement in the country that has to do with a turn towards the appreciation of the body. And certainly along with somatics, our kind of sister institution, Esalen Institute, the massage crew at Esalen, when they first started, there were only really two kinds of massage in the world: Swedish massage, which was highly formulaic, and prostitution, sexual massage. Esalen massage created, this kind of humanistic kind of integral massage. It's an amazingly wonderful thing. It's all over the world. They teach all over the world. I know there are people. One of my neighbors just got back from Indonesia. That's been an enormous recovery of the body, this kind of healthy, sensual touch movement in massage as part of healing. And I think just a parenthetical point about that, one of the things that somatics has to offer, which is extremely important, is a pleasure that's not simply sensual, not simply sexual, to really feel the body as not just a problem to be solved, which it certainly is, but it's also a source of great pleasure. I just can't tell you how moving it's been for me to be walking in the coastal trails where there are no airplanes, because there's this vast silence where it feels like the earth can breathe again. And it's so pleasurable to be in that feeling of the winds and the breezes and the clouds without airplanes, this vast silence. So to teach people how to really enjoy what we have, to really, despite all the suffering and struggles we have, but there's an enormous amount of pleasure that's possible if we turn towards this body and find within it not only the aches and pains, but also the great sources of taking in the wonders that we live with and the wonders of the people that we are around. So pleasure, okay?
Yeah, that is so important to resource in our life, whether it be nature or it be, like you say, near and dear people or ourselves. So we always have our body with us. We are our body. So that is the good news. And I love to hear you speak about it that way, that the body can be a place of pleasure and comfort. And I found that with so many people, that to make that transition from focusing on pain, on their own suffering, we can take it, for example, just physical sensation of pain, to repattern and open to the possibility and to find pleasure, to find the ease and the opening that offers. I find it's almost like a magical place. When I see students and clients enter that place, it's like a new world opening to them. What can you say a little more about that in your experience?
It's. I remember what it brings to mind is I had not gone to Europe ever until I'd been rolfing for quite a while, and I remember first going into Florence, into the Uffizi Gallery, and seeing Renaissance art, these portrayals of the body by Michelangelo and a lot of the Renaissance artists, and I thought, oh my God, we left beauty out. We've got this very geometric, the rolfing was very geometric, where the blocks of the body stack and alignment, this side, that side, blah, blah, blah. What about beauty? It's like, what about beauty and pleasure and the delights of the flesh? And I think of the Navajo, the Hotso, one of the spiritual traditions is called the Beauty Way in the tribal peoples in the southwest of the United States. The Beauty Way, that everything, like making things beautiful, is itself a healing art. And so the approach to the body is just a geometrical, abstract series of planes and shifts and balances, leaves out most of what our being is about, which is you imagine the amazing imagination, the mystical consciousness, these great states of cosmic awareness, let alone all of the sexual ecstasy, all of these things that are so wondrous and make it worth the suffering to find these other parts. And this is where the hard work is, of course. This just doesn't happen. One of my most important colleagues and friends who died about 4 years ago in Tokyo, Yuasa Yasuo, who wrote many books on the body, he said the big difference between Asia and America is that in America and Europe, you think of the mind-body split as part of reality, whereas in Asia, you think of, it's a problem to be solved by all of the practices, the martial arts, the flower arrangement, no theater, zazen, and so forth, where you actually develop a self that is not locked into these very pathological divisions.
Yeah, to ourselves as being in a wondrous state. That is just such a rich place to be and rest in. So, Don, would it be possible that you share a little guided practice with us?
Sure, and I'll build on your last statement about a place to rest in. So, those of all of you who are listening and watching here, if you would just settle into your seat or your cushion or however you're watching this, and just let yourself feel your situation, how you're supported, any tensions you might feel, the feelings of that may be evoked in you by what we've been discussing here. I'm just going to give you about a minute to kind of take a quick little swim through your body to notice what's going on here. Okay, there we are. Here we are, wherever. And just notice how that leaves you as we come to a conclusion here. And that's it.
Thank you, Don. And that just reminds me of how simple and powerful a somatic practice can be. Just to take that moment to attune, just a minute, to just close my mouth and my eyes and go inside and sense myself from the inside and to remember myself. It's like it's the instant gateway for me into greater connection, not just in myself, but with everything around me. And so thank you for that wonderful practice, Don.
You're welcome, Jeffrey. Thank you for your wonderful questions and stimulating comments.
I've enjoyed so much. So before
you will become the expert in COVID and somatics.
From a first-person experience.
You should trademark it very fast.
Yeah, I'm learning. I've learned a lot, but I'm getting much, much better. And that is the thing in the somatic work is that whatever ailment or experience we have, we learn from that. It becomes enriching and becomes a learning opportunity, which I really like. What is beautiful we can learn from, and what is pain in the ass we can learn from as well. So
thank you.
So Don, as we're coming towards the end of our session, is there anything else that you want to cover or share with the listeners?
Well, just going back to my granddaughter again, I just have this urge as I've gotten older towards the end of my life to really share with people, pay attention to the gifts we have of being on this amazing place, and not to ruin them, to nurture and be feel grateful for the gifts we have, and to move forward to make it accessible to more people to know that, to enable other people to find peace and gratitude and some kind of beauty in their lives.
Beautiful words. Thank you, Don. Well, I'm so grateful for our time spent here together And if someone wants to, or where can people find you? Can you please state your website and like so?
Yeah, it's just my name, donhanlonjohnson.com.
Yeah. And of course, you have numerous books as well if people want to read more, and you have resources on your website as well, and so on. Wonderful. Well, it's been a great pleasure, Don. Thank you so much for today and for everything you have done for the somatic field. Tremendous contribution. I am personally so grateful. No words could articulate how grateful I am, and I'm speaking of so many. So thank you for your life's work, Don.
Okay.
Okay, so I want to thank everybody for being part of this great session today with Don Hanlon Johnson. Thank you.
Thank you for joining the Somatic Movement Summit, brought to you by the Shift Network. To learn more, visit somaticmovementsummit.com. To learn more about our global programs, to support you in waking up in all the areas of your life and taking inspired action, visit theshiftnetwork.com. Thank you again for joining us and for sharing this embodied path to vitality and wholeness with your friends and family.